am not going to belabor the top 10 mistakes leaders make, but if you will go to uh, that in the Hans Finzel book, you should have a sheet that talks about that, the 10 common mistakes leaders make. Let me just quickly go through these before we break. So these 10 common mistakes apply to more than just church, but they certainly do apply to church. And here they are in the order that Hans Finzel takes them. Number one is having a top-down attitude. This is the pastor who has to be in control of everything. I don't want to be in control of everything. There are very few things I want to be in control of. I certainly want to be in control of what happens on that platform and in that pulpit. But, you know, if you set it up where you have to know everything, you have to be in control of everything, then ultimately everything hinges on you. And that's just not healthy. It's not good. So my model of leadership is one of influence more than authority. So I want to have influence with everything that happens in our church. So we have a ministry, Celebrate Recovery, meets on Tuesday nights. I've been one time to that. I bless that ministry. I promote that ministry. I'm so grateful for that ministry. I want to have influence. I'm convinced that the leader of that ministry would not do anything that she knows would be against me or my philosophy. That's a different thing than me being in control and making her, now you report to me what you're doing and how you're doing it. I get a general sense. I've got my other pastors that sort of are directly involved in that ministry, but I'm not cashing in my leadership chips on that. You see, so if you just have a top-down ministry, everything focuses on me and my desires, I think it makes people feel oppressed. I think it makes them devalue your leadership. I'd rather have influence than authority. My sons are 36 and 34 years old now. I think that's right, or almost. And I don't have any authority over my sons. But man, they call me all the time. Dad, what do you think? I've got influence. And they value my opinion. And I can't imagine my son's doing something and I just told him, I don't think you should do that. I think that's wrong. I think that's bad. I think that'll hurt you, hurt other people. I think they value my opinion so much they go, okay, I'm going to trust you on that. Influence is so much better than authority. Now, I have the authority to teach and preach the word. And I don't back off from that one bit, but our church is large and a lot's going on. And if it's about what I can do and what I know, then we're way past maximum already. So top-down leadership's a problem. Number two, type A personality, putting paperwork before people work. That's just a common thing where for some people, ministry is about filling out reports and it's paperwork over people work. For pastors, that can look like being a study rat instead of being a shepherd. So beware that one. I don't think I need to belabor that. Number three, the absence of affirmation. Gene Mims told me something when I was in seminary. He said, you need to have 10 attaboys for every one you jerk. That's a good rule. So I've got guys right here, all the guys that are on my staff will tell you, I mean, it's rare that I ever correct them. For one thing, they don't make many mistakes. These guys are really smart and godly, and I trust them completely. But I appreciate them. I couldn't function without them. Our church needs them. And, if they felt like I'm looking over their shoulder all the time, then they're just not going to be very motivated to innovate and to create and to really shepherd. But when I encourage them and bless them, when I catch them doing good things, I noticed the way you do that. I mean, these guys take care of me. Stuff that I just don't have to worry about. I express appreciation. Yesterday in my sermon, what I do, I talked about these guys that I work with, the kind of men that they are, the way they bless me. I'm going to put that in there. And remember, you reproduce what you honor. So if I honor them for the way they serve and bless me, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do more honoring and serving me. But if you're just always on people, just criticizing them, I know leaders like that, and people just don't like being around them, even if they're incredibly gifted. But people are afraid to mess up around them. They're just going to get chewed out all the time. Just who wants to be? How do you represent Christ? How many times did Jesus do that? I mean, when Peter denied Jesus, look at the way Jesus restores him in John 21. Jesus had every right to chew him out. How did he do it? Simon, do you love me? Feed my sheep. Wow, it's just like, it is so masterful. Well, what else would we expect from Jesus, right? But we can learn from that. So it's a mistake if you don't affirm and bless people. Can I tell you something? Every church, all 3 churches I've pastored, when I got there, somebody pointed out the strong women in the church and warned me about them. Watch out for her. She'll cause you a problem. Watch out for her. She just likes to be in control. She resents the pastor. You know how many of those women caused me a problem? 0. Not one, not ever. Now, what I've learned is strong women just like a stronger leader, but they want to be affirmed. They want you to know they're not out just for control. They just want to see stuff done. And a lot of times there's a vacuum of leadership, and because honorary men won't do it, they fill it. And when you harness it and bless it and encourage it and thank them for their strength, they put all that strength to work fulfilling your vision and your leadership. You've just got to be affirming. So the absence of affirmation, major problem in a lot of pastorates. Number 4, not making room for mavericks. So you're always going to have the people in your church who they think on their own. They go off on, they do stuff. We had it happen just last week. So we have a benevolence fund, and our deacons administer our benevolence funds. Last week, well-intentioned member puts up on Facebook, she discovers about a need in a needy family in our church. She puts up on Facebook, well, we need to do something about this. Before long, it's like wildfire. And I mean, money's coming in from all over the place to help these people. I got another 150 I need to give you, by the way, Scott. Somebody dropped off at our house, a non-member, saw it on Facebook, brought us $150 for them. Now, 2 things. First of all, I could react against that. Well, don't they know we've got benevolence funds and that's the job of our deacons? I could react that way. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? Only if I'm threatened by a lack of control, which, okay, this in general needs to be a little bit more organized than that. You can't just have people putting up needs on Facebook for a lot of reasons. But man, once it's done, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to facilitate it. I'm going to bless it. I'm going to say, okay, let's do this in an organized, good way. And I'm not going to scold the young lady who put it up. Why? Because her heart's good. She's not doing anything to hurt anybody. She's trying to help. So you got to have room for that. I had the all-time greatest maverick of, seriously, Dave Adams, who is a dean at Liberty now, was on my staff at Ashland Avenue. There's no bigger maverick in the world than Dave Adams. That guy just thinks off the plane different than anybody else, and he's always doing incredible stuff, creative stuff. And if I tried to rein him in, I'm not using his genius. So there are always going to be people who look at things differently than you do, think differently than you do, but you can't be threatened by that. Allow room for mavericks. If they misstep, okay, explain to them how they misstepped and why they need to do it differently next time, but affirm their heart. And this is I think the paradigm you need to set up is that if you can trust somebody's heart, you can deal with their mistakes. It's the heart you're looking at. Are they trying to help? Are they meaning to bless? Okay, then we can work with everything else. Number 5, dictatorship in decision making. I know all the answers. So several years ago at a staff meeting, a staff retreat, one of my associates says, here's what we need to do to totally change our Sunday school. And I looked at him, I said, you think I'm going to do that? I'd be crazy to do that. You're asking me to take away Gene Costigan's Sunday school class? I'm not going to do that. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought that's exactly what needs to happen. And I went back to my guys and I said, you're right, that needs to happen. And it is what he proposed that day in that staff retreat is exactly the way we do our educational ministry now. Wasn't my idea. I was even against it initially. But we do it, and it's worked beautifully, and other churches are copying what we do because it's been so successful. So if you go into it like you know all the answers, then the reality is you don't need anybody else. You can do it all yourself. Well, who wants to live like that? You got to have room for other people to know more than you do. In fact, the goal is to surround yourself with people who are competent in areas where you are not. I don't think anybody on my staff knows Greek like I do. So I feel more competent in Greek than any of those guys, but that's about it. I listen to them. They tell me things, and we come to decisions. But there's no question I have more say than anybody, but I don't have to have the say in everything. Number 6, dirty delegation. That's just when you delegate somebody with a task, and then you tell them how to do it, and you watch over their shoulder to make sure they do it the way you want it done. If you give somebody a job, let them do it. And that's just part of good leadership. Number 7, failure to communicate. You've seen Cool Hand Luke, right? What we have here is a failure to communicate. Famous line from Cool Hand Luke. And it's common in Baptist churches. I could just show you over and over and over that so many points where there has been tension and disagreement in any pastorate of mine has been because of a failure to communicate. Number 8, missing the clues of corporate culture. I think I've already said enough about that, where you come in and you find something quirky or hokey or whatever, and you got to change it, and you don't think through the way they see it and why it matters to them. So you've got to watch out for those corporate culture markers and respect them, even while you might slowly seek to change them. Number 9, success without successors. This is the Baptist sin of sins, I think, is that we have church pastors in churches for a long time, and yet they don't, when the pastor leaves the church, it's like they don't think to call somebody who's from within. They got to go look everywhere around without, call a pastor who knows nothing about their church. Well, it seems to me if a guy's at a church for 20 years, he should have made disciples enough that they would actually have several people that they could choose from who would be capable of pastoring that church. Why are Baptists still bad at this? I don't know. But you should make it your goal that you're always bringing up young men for the pastorate, women in ministry, that we're always bringing up another generation of serving. You don't really succeed unless you're creating successors. And number 10, failure to focus on the future. So this was easy for me at Buck Run when I came because they had long-range plans. They had 100 acres. They had these plans to build. Okay, now what? 2 years ago, we moved into that new building. How do we focus on the future once a long-term goal has been met? So that's been the challenge. And that's why on the day we moved into our new building, in our first service, we announced that we were sending Zach Thurman, who was my executive pastor at that time, to Fort Collins, Colorado, and planting a church. And that we were going to be recruiting members of our church to move to Fort Collins and students to transfer to Colorado State. And guess what? Just last week, a church in Fort Collins voted to disband and to give us their 5 acres and their 10,000 square foot building worth $2.5 million. And Justin's going there he's moving to Fort Collins. The principal of the Franklin County High School resigned, and his family moved to Fort Collins, and we've got, 4 or 5 families that have gone and a bunch of students. And I said all along, we couldn't make getting in a building the goal, because then what? And so I wanted something that on the day we moved in that building would eclipse the news that we've moved into the building. And it was that we're sending our people to Fort Collins and we're planting the church. And so that's been a focus, and we're constantly thinking about the future. I've got a 5-year plan right now of what I hope to happen over the next 5 years. So you can't just get to the next goal and then stop thinking. We're always focused on the future until we die or Christ comes.